Welcome to the Agatha Christie in Devon podcast. I'm Matt Newbury.
And I'm Sophie Pearce. And this podcast is all about the places in Devon that Agatha loved and which inspired her. And for this episode, we're in the wonderfully atmospheric Kents Cavern, a cave deep underground in Wellswood in Torquay. In a moment, we're going to be explaining why we're in this particular place. But this episode, it's the last in the series, and it's all about legacy, isn't it, Matt?
Yeah, so by living in Torquay and the local area for 30 years of her life, and then also buying Greenway, obviously Agatha visited a lot of places, and her legacy is people come from all over the world now to visit those places and learn about the Agatha Christie story. And obviously lots of places inspired her in her stories as well. So we're kind of looking at how she couldn't have possibly known that at the time, but accidentally she's left this amazing tourism legacy, and people come from all over the world to find out more about her life.
So in this podcast, we're basically visiting all the places that we haven't managed to get to so far in the series. And so we're starting here in amazing Kents Cavern. Now, when Agatha was a girl, this place was at the pioneering cutting edge of archaeology, which was a young discipline at the time and still very new. And we're really lucky to have Abbie Potter with us today, who's a tour guide here at Kents Cavern and also part of the education team. And Abbie, take us back to that time when the caves all started and what was going on and what Agatha would have known about.
So when we talk about Agatha at Kents Cavern, you first kind of have to talk about her father. You've got to talk about Frederick. He was a member of the Torquay National History Society. He came here regularly, not just because of the cave itself, although it is really beautiful. He actually came here because of one man, and that is William Pengelly. He is our main archaeologist we like to talk about here, and it was his discoveries that put this place on the map. He started digging in here in 1865 and he dug for 15 years, all the way till 1880.
So Agatha would have come here, most likely.
Absolutely. In fact, we've got written evidence that Agatha came here as a child with her father to explore and have a look around, all around the caves.
So she would have been about 13 years old when they were first digging this out. It would have been very different then, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. So when the cave opened officially to the public, it was 1903. And the landscape, we're looking right now at a beautifully paved cave that looks rather nice and rather safe. But for her, it would have been absolutely chock-a-block with mud, bones everywhere, trenches in the ground, and there would have even been a little carpentry workshop just on one far side.
And no lighting, because obviously we've got lighting here at the moment.
No.
I presume it would have been lanterns back then.
It would have been lanterns, it would have been candles. We didn't have electric put into the cave until the 1920s, which still relatively early compared to a lot of sites, but for her, she would have been exploring this in what I always call a bit more of the Indiana Jonesy way.
Should we take a little walk down?
Absolutely.
Presumably, like you say, it wouldn't have looked like this when she came, but the area that we're approaching now, is this where the dig really started? Or?
So the cave has a bit of a strange history. It started off with a floor line that was a lot higher up than the one we see today. Now, the slope we're walking down takes us around 30 feet down into the cave system. That floor line would have been about 10 foot above our heads. So when she was here, bits would have been missing. There would have been a little bit kind of in different places, and there would have been bones emerging from that ground.
Wow, extraordinary.
We should mention that you might be able to hear quite a bit of dripping. It's really raining heavily outside, and the cave's starting to flood a bit, isn't it?
Absolutely. Two of the chambers
We might be
flooded.
cave swimming in a minute.
Well, we're even deeper into the cavern now, and we're in a place called the Rocky Cave, which has the most incredible stalactites and stalagmites all around, glistening and dripping. And actually, the cave is flooded, which rarely happens, Abbie.
It is. It doesn't happen very often. It is the sheer amount of rain that we've had has trickled through. We are a limestone cave, so we are permeable. So that water comes all the way down and does stay here for a little bit.
So what's the cave famous for in terms of archaeology?
So the cave is most famous for the sheer amount of artefacts that were found here and the importance of a select few. So artifacts-wise, we have had hundreds of thousands. We talked about William Pengelly earlier. In his original excavation, over 80,000 artifacts were found. Now, the majority of them are now stored down at Torquay Museum, which is just down the road, and like we said earlier, has that nice Agatha connection. but a lot are around the world. I know we've got some in the Natural History Museum in London. Now, the most famous of all of the artefacts are our human ones. We do have evidence of humans within the cave.
And what period are we talking?
Well, we're really lucky. We are one of only 2 caves in the entire world that has had proof of 3 different humans actually living within its walls. And we're the only one of the 2 you're allowed to visit. So we have proof of the first, Homo heidelbergensis, living here about 500,000 years ago. We have Neanderthal living here about 100,000 to 40,000 years ago. But our probably most famous find of all is Homo sapien. We have a section of jawbone that was found up where I brought you into the cave. And that is known to be the oldest proof of our species that has ever been found in Britain to date.
You're a fan of Agatha Christie yourself, and there is a bit of a connection to one of her books here as well, isn't there?
Absolutely. So I've been a great Agatha fan since I was very small. My mum's a librarian, so it was inevitable. And I first came to this cave on a bit of an Agatha pilgrimage, if I'm absolutely honest, because one of her brilliant books was based in these very caves, and that's The Man in the Brown Suit. It's currently celebrating its 100-year anniversary this year, so it's an exciting time.
And there's a perfect little extract that I'm going to read, and you can sort of put it in context for us.
Yeah.
So this is from early on in the book. Our principal reason for settling in Little Hampsley had been the neighbourhood of Hampsley Cavern, a buried cave rich in deposits of the Aurignacian culture. We had a tiny museum in the village, and the curator and Papa spent most of their days messing about underground and bringing to light portions of woolly rhinoceros and cave bear.
Absolutely. I mean, we have had both of them animals found in the cave. I believe she's talking about William Pengelly, who would have met her father, would have interacted. And in fact, the cave bear is one of our favourite finds because one of our oldest artefacts is a cave bear skull. So it would have been something really important while she was exploring these caves.
So you also mark the Agatha Christie connection every year at the Agatha Christie Festival by holding some fairly unique events here, don't you?
Absolutely. So this year we've had 2 really good events. We've had a lecture that was given to us by a wonderful author, and it was all about the espionage connection between The Man in the Brown Suit and those 3 other books that had the same kind of theme running through them. That was a really fascinating one to listen to. But one of our most popular events to this day is the Cave Cinema. We run Cave Cinema all year round, but the Agatha Cave Cinema brings in people from all walks of life, all around the world. This year alone, I've had the pleasure of meeting people from Canada, Australia, just to come and watch films in these caves in her own setting.
It works perfect. And you have a cave bar as well, which sounds quite tempting, doesn't it?
Yes.
So yeah, her legacy lives on.
It really does, in these walls.
We should try and get out of here before it floods anymore, don't you think?
I think so. Time for a sharp exit. Well, we've come a short distance from Kents Cavern to Torquay Museum, which is a wonderful, elegant Victorian building just down the Barbican Road. And Matt, we're outside, and what's this plaque? It says the Torquay Natural History Society was founded AD 1844.
Yeah, so this is probably the oldest museum in Devon, I think, and her father was also a member here, and he's a member of this history society, so he would have come here a lot, and I think because of that, it's very likely that Agatha Christie would have come here for talks.
Let's go inside. Nice to get out of the rain. It's a bit of a damp day today, and in we come.
It's a good day to visit a museum.
Well, we're walking through the museum now, and we're coming down into the Agatha Christie gallery. And lots of lovely stuff in here. And the first thing that strikes me is this cabinet of beautifully, brightly coloured hardback novels with lovely sort of 60s, 70s designs.
Yeah, they're so collectible. I think these are all first editions, so they're probably worth a little bit as well. I'd like some of these at home, but they're so colourful, and they really sort of trace, because obviously Agatha Christie wrote from so many different decades, and so a lot of the covers sort of follow the trends and the themes of those decades as well.
And over here we've got a amazing Art Deco room with 2 burnt orange armchairs and beautiful screens, all with this very geometric Art Deco design. So what's this set from? So
this is from the David Suchet ITV series. I think this was actually built for Cards on the Table, and it was built in 2005. So it's actually used in those TV series with David Suchet.
And over here, this is something I find fascinating, which is when you actually have an artifact that the person handled. And here we've got Agatha's planning notebook for the mysterious affair at Styles. And this is a really little cheap brown notebook with handwriting in pencil.
I can't actually read much of the handwriting, but it does start off with the word Poirot.
Yes.
This is from Mysterious Affair of Styles, which is the first book she ever wrote. She started planning it in 1916, I think, and then it was released in 1921.
I'm Philip King. I'm a Visitor Experience Manager at Torquay Museum.
Agatha's father was one of the founders of the Torquay Natural History Society, where there's a plaque outside the museum. What's the connection between the society and the museum?
So the society were formed in 1844. It was built specifically as a museum, and the society have met here ever since. And currently they have lectures twice a week, Tuesday and a Wednesday morning, and some Saturdays. It's primarily a science and historical, but they have humanities, and they do venture into art from time to time.
Agatha Christie, do many people come to the museum, do you think, because of her?
Yeah, certainly she's a big draw. In fact, people come from all over the world. Just yesterday we opened early for a group that came from the States. They were in about 8:15, full of excitement. Fortunately for me, Agatha's away in, and then they enjoy the rest of the museum as well, but certainly Agatha's the reason they come.
What are some of the most popular things they come and see? When they go into I think it's the UK's only dedicated Agatha Christie gallery, what are some of the most popular items that people are really impressed with?
They certainly like the ambience and the feel of the Poirot office. Certainly, they love to see her Agatha's fur coat and her handwriting, the notes, and some of the personal items.
I mean, Agatha was well known for her interest in archaeology, and of course, there's a lot about archaeology in the museum as well. Like, there's a lot of stuff about Egypt, for example.
It's a nice add-on for those people that want to follow her line and come up and see Samtek, our child mummy, and also touch base with some of the artefacts in the Explorers gallery.
And you've also got a shop here, and the shop's full of a lot of Agatha Christie items and a lot of old second-hand books. That must be quite a draw as well, isn't it?
Certainly, and we try and offer a bit of a service. So if people get to know us, and we'll get phone calls and we'll get emails saying, "Oh, have you got this or that, or could you look out for this or that copy?" So it's a bit of a service, and it's a bit of a link that we try and extend across the globe, so to speak. And certainly, just recently, we've been sending copies of a new book out again to America, and I think one to Australia. We have a little team of individuals that scour the place for second-hand paperbacks, Agatha's paperbacks, and then we pop them on our shelves, and it makes a good display, but it's also an earner, so everything spent down there helps the work of the museum, of course.
Thank you, Phil. And this cabinet that we're by now, Matt, this all relates to the 1990 centenary, doesn't it?
Yeah, so it's got tickets from theatre productions of Spider's Web that year, and it's also got something that mentions the menu for the centenary banquet, which was held at the Riviera Centre.
Yeah, I think it's actually a napkin that they must have had printed.
I mean, it's beautiful. So It's got, as a starter, you've got fresh Dart salmon mousse. Well, Agatha Christie loved salmon. The main course was fillet of beef Devonshire. And then it also finished with fruit salad and clotted cream. Agatha obviously loved clotted cream. And then it was coffee with Suchard mince.
Very sophisticated. It was probably a wonderful occasion. Took place at the Riviera Centre. And we're now walking over to a large cabinet which actually contains Agatha's fur coat on loan from the National Trust. So presumably that was left at Greenway.
Yeah, apparently dates of the 50s or the 60s. And then next to that, we've got one of the costumes that Joan Hickson wore as Miss Marple as well. So I think this was from Murder at the Vicarage. So absolutely beautiful. There's even a handbag down there with some of her knitting in it.
Very good. You never need to be without your knitting. You never know when you can just get on with it. And then another incredible set here, which is this Poirot's office?
Yeah, so this is Poirot's office. And this is actually used in the episodes. And the amount of detail, if you go and look at the case files in the back, you're not supposed to step over the rope, but we were allowed to earlier. You can read all the names of the various cases, like the Mysterious Affair at Styles. You've got a drinks cabinet. You've got a beautiful fireplace. You've got a spider, which is apparently a Mexican red rump tarantula. I don't know what that's about.
But amazingly, although It looks incredible. You know, the table's actually just made of MDF. I mean, this is the skill of people who make sets.
So now it's time for our regular feature, What Christie Means to Me in 3. And we've come over to Eastgate Bookshop in Totnes, and we're going to speak to Nigel Jones about what Christie means to you and to the shop.
I was introduced to Agatha Christie via films. Did Murder on the Orient Express, watched with the family at Christmas. I was probably maybe 16 at the time. I was reading a lot of books then. I started reading a few Agathas and, thoroughly enjoyed them. Kind of got on with the rest of my life. Living in Manchester and North Wales, she didn't feature quite as strongly as she does now, because now I live in the southwest of England near Torquay, and I realised that Agatha Christie is something of an institution here. So we opened our bookshop about 4 years ago. We always stock some of her books, and then we decided to make an Agatha Christie section at the front of the shop, and the response to that was fairly overwhelming. We could hear people going, "Oh, look, Agatha Christie from the high street," coming in. What I really noticed as well is like all ages coming in, women, men, people well dressed, people just shuffling in off the street. Everyone seemed to like Agatha Christie and appreciate her. So that little section of Agatha Christie grew, and we started getting bags and jigsaws and all the things we could go along with, playing cards. It's all Agatha, and our Agatha Christie section has grown and grown. We were really privileged to do the Agatha Christie Festival at Torquay Abbey this year, which we really enjoyed. Great speakers. We learnt so much about Agatha and her life. I'm definitely becoming a little bit of an Agatha-phile. I don't know if that's a proper word. And then around here, you've got all the places that people can visit. And now I'm feeling a little bit, I know more about her, and people ask questions about where was this set. So I'm really, really getting in deep with Agatha Christie. And of course, what I really like about that is people spend money in our shop at Agatha Christie. And that's going to help me pay my rent. It's going to help me buy more books. It's going to help me pay staff. So for me as a bookseller, Agatha Christie has become more and more and more important. I can't really stress enough how much we're probably going to grow that section. She's even pushed off the diaries this year, so we're going to keep our Agatha Christie section at the front. We feel it can go from strength to strength. There's editions that the publishers put out, there's hardbacks, there's special editions, there's one-off editions where you've got the giveaways at the end of the book on them. Then there were none, where you've got the little envelope in the back. And so there's all these clever things that the publishers are doing to make her more and more, reinventing her, bringing it to more and more people. Every now and again, there's a film that comes out, which is tremendous, because then we get more interest. So we've got big plans. We maybe would like to do more with Agatha, maybe something with the films, maybe have a little cocktail night. I don't know. You can just go on and on about all the things that are great with Agatha. We really, really appreciate her work.
Well, just up the road from the museum is the Imperial Hotel, and Matt and I have just come in. We're having a little coffee, and it really is a very classical, old, elegant hotel with lovely furniture and exotic carpets and lovely pictures. And Matt, this is really a hotel that's been established since Victorian times.
Yeah, I think the guest list is quite remarkable if you could get hold of the old guest books. So I think Queen Victoria came here with Prince Albert. Edward VII came here, and he used to have a mistress, Lily Langtry. So he'd have the royal yacht parked outside the front, and there's a secret little cove you can come in, and he used to come up and meet his mistress, Lily Langtry, here. The Beatles stayed here. Charles and Di had lunch here. So it's quite an incredible sort of historic guest list.
And it's a place that Agatha would have known growing up. It was very much part of the town, wasn't it?
Yeah, almost certainly. There's no way she wouldn't have come here. It was a 5-star hotel. It was one of the best hotels in Devon at the time. So, and the views on the terrace are absolutely extraordinary.
Well, should we go out and have a little look? I mean, the hotel really does teeter on the edge of the sea, and the views over the bay are wonderful. Well, here we are on the terrace, and in true British style, it started raining while we were having our coffee. So we're sheltering under a couple of beautiful old cedar trees and looking out over the bay, which, even though it's grey and overcast and wet, is still very beautiful. We can see the twin islands of the Millstones over to our right, and Saddle Rock to our left, which is where they used to do swallow diving in the 1930s. And the Imperial inspired Agatha in terms of location in her novels, didn't it?
Yeah, in the Poirot story, Peril at End House. End House is a building that was very close to this hotel. It was knocked down many years ago, but she renamed the Imperial Hotel the Majestic Hotel in that story, and Torquay becomes the fictional town of St. Lou, and Poirot and Hastings are sat on the terrace right at the start of the book in beautiful sunshine, unlike today, and their description could actually almost have been written today.
The gardens of the hotel lay below us, freely interspersed with palm trees. The sea was a deep and lovely blue, the sky clear and the sun shining, with the single-hearted fervour an August sun should, but in England so often does not, have.
Unfortunately, their peace is shattered quite early on in the novel because a bullet narrowly misses Poirot's head.
Well, I think we're safe today.
I think we are safe.
Nobody else is out here today.
And Miss Marple stays here as well. So she stays at the same Majestic Hotel, which is now in the fictional town of Danemouth. And she returns here in Sleeping Murder. And the final chapter of that book is set in Torquay. Well, we've now come to Churston Ferrers and St Mary's Church, and where better to take sanctuary from quite bad weather than inside a church. I'm going to go inside and find out what the Agatha Christie connection is here. So I'm now just come through the door of the church, and you must be Philip. So this is Philip Mantell, who's one of the church wardens here at St Mary's Church.
Agatha Christie worshipped here, not all the time. She had other homes, of course, but when she was living at Greenway, she was a regular attender at the church for a number of years, and particularly from the mid-50s onwards.
There was something about the windows at the end of the church that she described as like a gaping tooth, didn't she? A missing tooth.
Yes, she didn't like the plain glass above the altar. Every Sunday it frustrated her, so she decided to do something about it, and particularly have nice pale colours of whatever design she agreed to in the end.
So she wrote a short story, I believe, to pay for a brand new stained glass window, didn't she?
Yes, there was a bit of a problem about which story became published. The Diocese of Exeter wanted assurance that the money would be forthcoming, so there was a bit of a political debate about how that was going to happen, but in the end, I think Agatha Christie's company bought the story back, and a sum of £1,000 was set aside to cover the cost of the window, and everything was agreed, but that took a year or so, I think, to get going.
So should we ever wander down and have a look
Yeah.
at this beautiful window? I understand there's some controversy as well, because usually a stained glass window on a church would show the crucifixion. Is that right? And Agatha didn't want to do that.
No, she wanted something much more user-friendly and positive. She didn't like that negativity idea. And she wanted the focus to be the 23rd Psalm, and we can see the words written in the bottom pane of the middle window. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me down to lie in green pastures. So she wanted that as a theme. And she also wanted it to have different parts of the story of Jesus. She was particularly keen that children sitting in the church on a Sunday morning, listening to sermons being spoken at them, would have something visual to look at that was contemporary and stimulating, and the children might like to ask what the stories that in each pane, each of the 5 panes, was all about.
Well, I think she chose a relatively local artist to put this together, didn't she?
Yeah, there was a short list, and in the end, a gentleman called James Patterson from Bideford was chosen. Agatha liked his style, she liked the colours, and the usual negotiations and things were agreed fully in the end.
So if we're looking at this central panel that shows the Good Shepherd with his lamb, and the other panels show, I can see the manger and the Virgin and the Child, and angels appearing to the shepherds, and the fishermen on their boats. So loads to look at, isn't there?
Yeah, you start from the left hand of the 5 panels of the angels telling the shepherds of the birth of the baby Jesus. Inside left is the stable after the Nativity, with the shepherds kneeling, Mary and Joseph, the donkey and an ox, coloured in purple, which is quite interesting. Wouldn't expect to see that. The central one, which is the 23rd Psalm, is Jesus the Good Shepherd carrying a lamb and another sheep peering through his legs. The centre right panel is all about Jesus' ministry. and it focuses on the story of Lake Galilee and the fishermen with nets, and Jesus is seen pointing, casting the nets over on the side of the boat. And on the far right, Jesus walking on the lake, trying to encourage St. Peter, who's stepping out nervously onto the water. So those are the 5 examples of the stories of Jesus' life. And above that, we've got illustrations of the local economy, farming, fishing, forestry, and we've got in the middle 4 angels playing musical instruments.
And she didn't make a sort of big hoo-ha about it. There was no plaques or anything, but I think her daughter came back, didn't she? Should we go have a look at this plaque over here?
Yeah. Rosalind Hicks, who I remember sitting in the pews regularly on a Sunday morning, her daughter wanted something to notify what the stained glass window was all about, and a simple plaque here. To the glory of God, the east window was given by Agatha Christie Malone, DBE, of Greenway House in this parish, designed by James Patterson, dedicated by Robert, Bishop of Exeter, 1957.
Agatha described it as one of her proudest legacies that she left, even though she wrote all these amazing books, you know. This is one of the things she was most proud of, isn't it?
Yeah, she loved coming to Greenway. She loved coming to Churston Church when she was able to, and it gave her a sense of legacy and leaving something in the parish church where she was very comfortable. This was a much quieter life for her, away from the bustle of Oxfordshire and London, and she was content here and wanting to leave this little legacy as a memorial of her happiness in her times here.
Well, I've now come back outside the church, and next door you've got Churston Court, or it's been known as Churston Manor, and apparently Agatha would come here after the church services and have Sunday lunch with the Lord of the Manor, and this is just being done up at the moment, and apparently it's going to be a restaurant and a wedding venue, so hopefully somewhere that fans can visit in the very near future. And nearby in the village we've also got the golf course, and apparently this was also the inspiration for Murder on the Links. So yeah, there's lots of legacy places to visit in this beautiful village area.
Well, sad to say the weather has not improved. We're now at gorgeous Elberry Cove, and you can hear the pebbles underfoot on this beautiful beach, which really was a favourite of Agatha's, wasn't it, Matt?
Yeah.
Especially when she lived at Greenway.
Exactly. So I spoke to Matthew Pritchard, who we've interviewed in previous podcasts, and he used to love coming down here with his grandmother to come swimming. So yeah, it's an absolutely beautiful spot, and it inspired her. So the ABC murders, when there's a serial killer going around places named after the letters of the alphabet and killing people whose name starts with that letter. So Churston is nearby here. So the third murder was Sir Carmichael Clark, who was murdered in Churston. So that's why she set it down here. So another legacy that will always be here.
I mean, this is quite sad in a way. This is our last episode of the podcast, and it's been absolutely glorious to make this programme and to go to all these beautiful places and talk to all these fascinating people about Agatha's legacy.
Oh, it has. We've been to so many places, haven't we? We've been to Burr Island, Dartmoor, we've been all over Torquay. It's been really fun to do. We really appreciate people listening to it. And hopefully we'll come back for the occasional specials as well. So maybe at next year's festival. So wait and see. In my head, we were going to finish with a quote in beautiful sunshine down on Elberry Cove. And there's a quote from Hastings, so Poirot's assistant, from the ABC Murders, which sums it all up. Unfortunately, it's tipping it down. This is guerrilla podcasting, but it's a nice place to leave it.
Well, I think we should, in that great spirit, keep going despite the rain. So we're going to read that lovely little quote from that novel to you as a way of finishing off the podcast, which has been such a joy to do. We went down the lane. At the foot of it, a path led between brambles and bracken down to the sea. Suddenly we came out on a grassy ridge overlooking the sea and a beach of glistening white stones. All around, dark trees ran down to the sea. It was an enchanting spot, white, deep green and sapphire blue. How beautiful, I exclaimed. Clark turned to me eagerly. Isn't it? Why do people want to go abroad to the Riviera when they've got this? I've wandered all over the world in my time, and honest to God, I've never seen anything as beautiful. This podcast was recorded on location in Devon, England in September 2024 and is brought to you by the Agatha Christie Festival. It was funded by Torbay's Local Heritage Grant Scheme, which is a collaboration between Torquay Council, Torquay Culture and the English Riviera UNESCO Global Geopark, with funding from the National Lottery Heritage Fund.
Thanks to all our guests: Philip King from Torquay Museum, Abbie Potter from Kents Cavern, Philip Mantell from St Mary's Church in Churston Ferrers, and Nigel Jones from the Eastgate Bookshop in Totnes. Original music and design was by Rob Hoskins at Design by Hoskins. And why not join us at next year's Agatha Christie Festival on the English Riviera? Visit www.agathachristiefestival.com.